Will a second stimulus check not be coming to you because of major concerns about piracy? That is a major update we're delivering today here on LALATE. As always, subscribe and like the video if you have any questions. All right, here we go. Let's get to the major news. A new report out of the IRS today says that the first stimulus check was plagued by massive piracy and criminal activity, and they're now worried about whether a second stimulus check will be held up for the same concern. At issue is a new report by Don Ford, the head of criminal investigations for the IRS, and he found massive amount of piracy and criminal activity when the first stimulus check was issued, and now members of Congress are considering whether or not this should be held up your second stimulus check. Pirates, online pirates, were amounting to 18 million daily activities, according to a new report by Google, relied upon by the IRS. They said that was a surge that they had never seen. A CNBC report confirms the same thing today about that during the first stimulus check, they saw a 209,000% increase in criminal activity. Who was the major target? Senior citizens. It says senior citizens' personal identifiable information was used to commit fraud of magnitudes they had never seen, according to research by the firm Ideology. It generally believes that this surge was during the time in which first stimulus checks were issued. And there's now concern that second stimulus checks will be held up or not issued because of this piracy. On Tuesday, 2 people were charged with fraudulent criminal activity, loan activity, amounting to $250,000 during the first stimulus package. Their criminal activity was during the PPP program. You know, you heard a lot of bad activity during the PPP loan, but now people are actually being charged. And criminal charges are what are issues that members of Congress are now saying, hey, let's be more cautious in doing a second stimulus check. The scheme alleged online activity using even the SBA's logo. Thieves may be trying to steal personal identifiable information, accessing bank accounts, or installing ransomware and malware on a business owner's computer via loan-related attacks, according to the FBA, says a CNBC report. It's that type of language, concern, and worries that's causing members to Congress to second-guess the whole process of a second stimulus check. The second stimulus check, as we have reported on this channel all week long, and last week, this is day 8, thanks for tuning in, is that $2,000 could be coming to every household, every member of every household. And if you have children, those children could get $500 up to 3 kids per household. But how about dependents? Dependents were left out on the first stimulus check. There's a desire to pick up dependents. There's also a desire to drop the age of eligibility. The age of eligibility for the first stimulus check was age 18. There's a consideration to drop it to 16. And how about the age limit, the money limit? People were phased out and did not receive first stimulus checks because they made too much money in 2019. Well, how about 2020? There is now a concern for the second stimulus check to drop the income level so that more people got the check. And then how about people who are legally born here? A new lawsuit filed this week indicates that people who were born here legally as U.S. citizens, have Social Security numbers, have paid tax returns, in every regard are U.S. citizens, never got a stimulus check. The reason why? Because their parents are undocumented citizens. They're being left out. So a lot of people who didn't get first stimulus checks, either because they didn't qualify, or because the system didn't consider them as one to receive it, where are they to get their second stimulus check? And then there's you. If you're watching this video and you never got your first stimulus check and you're wondering where it is, you might be a victim of a piracy concern. Of course, none of these reports from the IRS talk about how to address the concern if a person never got their check. And then there's this. LALATE reported earlier today about a major new development, which is what is triggering the whole discussion about who should get a second stimulus check, where it should be dispersed, and how it's to be used. A new report indicates that EIDL grants, EIDL loans, and PPP loans were not given to businesses in any consistency, but rather, as LA reported earlier today in a major detail, that they were given in a consistent manner to businesses that were not impacted and not given to businesses that were impacted. The data comes from Ho Louis and Desi Volker, two economists at the Federal Reserve in New York. The Federal Reserve in New York, they're economists. They issued a statement that said, quote, in New York, the epicenter of the coronavirus in the United States, less than 20% of small businesses have received or been approved for PPP loans. But how about elsewhere? In contrast, more than 55% of small businesses in Nebraska were able to receive PPP loans. The data talks about basically this map. And if you look at the map, it's shocking. We all know which states got more coronavirus victims, more patients, more deaths. We all know that New York was the epicenter. New York had more than anything. California came in high. Massachusetts came in high. New Jersey came in high. Then we know there's some states that had very little at all. We know some states had barely had lockdown orders. But when you go to funding, when you look at EIDL grants, when you look at EIDL loans, when you look at PPP loans, when you look at stimulus checks and stimulus packages, where did the money go? The new report shows that most of the money went to those states that had the least impact. Nebraska. Why is Nebraska getting all this money when New York and California and New Jersey and Massachusetts were hurt the most? In fact, and here's the detail that's most shocking, is that the chart talks about less than 20% and more than 50%. The data shows that perhaps, allegedly, almost every business in these states like Nebraska got loans. But if very little, if any, and possibly none, in some communities in New York, New Jersey, California, and Massachusetts got anything. So what's going on here? That's the concern. The concern is if there's going to be a second stimulus package, who is to get the money and how much? And should a certain amount of money be diluted or given in a smaller amount to certain states that got less impact? But the states that had the biggest impact. New York has been very vocal about this. California less so. But certain states have had their residents, like you that might be watching, or their businesses like you that may be watching, get nothing. Or get very little. $1,000? $1,000? When you have a massive building with rent that you have to pay? Many of our people on this channel have commented, your rent for your business was $1,800. And it's been 2 months you've been shut down, but you got $1,000 to cover you and 3 other people. How does that work? That's not a stimulus. That's barely even catching up. Let's continue with what the Federal Reserve of New York found. The analysts found that less than 25% of business applicants, even that alone in New York and California, got anything. Horrible. And that over 40% of business applicants in Montana got money. Montana? Namely, quote, there's no statistical significant relationship between the severity of the impact of COVID-19, measured both in terms of cases and unemployment claims, and the share of small businesses getting PPP loans, after excluding New York and New Jersey. It's quite horrible. In fact, we now know that mountain states got most of the money. Mountain states where COVID cases were less, number of deaths were less, stay-at-home orders were less, businesses were interrupted less, got most of the money. Why are they getting most of the money? But in New York, nearly no one got money. Anything at all. The Trump administration fired back. Quote, nearly 500% of all loans were made by lenders with less than $1 billion in assets and non-SBA banks. SBA Minister John Jovita Corazana and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said in a joint statement on Sunday. Quote, over 850,000 loans, about 1/3 of 2.2 million loans, were made by lenders with $1 billion of assets or less. But who cares? Who cares that the lender was smaller? That, in fact, improves the allegation. If the lender was smaller, that means it may have been through a lender in a smaller state. The truth is the following. America needs a second stimulus check. The second stimulus check needs to come now. And the second stimulus check should have come last month. People's rent is due now. This is May 6th. Rent was due on May 1st. In fact, the biggest strain has been on businesses who were unable to make rent in the month of May and could be on businesses that can't make rent on the month of June. And how about the individual? It's no difference. You as an individual watching this channel, and I appreciate your patronage, have been impacted. You need the money. You need the money right now. And it should have come last month. But is one check enough? The issue is the second wave. Yes, there is a second wave coming. The question is when. A lot of data out of the CDC indicates that a second wave could be coming in May, not in June. And how bad is the data? The data is quite serious. In the first wave, in the current wave of coronavirus, the number of new COVID cases at its peak was 25,000 new cases per day in America. The new CDC data this week, however, indicates there could be as many as 250,000 new cases per day. An enormous growth. And how about the number of deaths? CDC is warning as many as 3,000 deaths per day in America. With that, what are we doing? What are we doing? A second stimulus check is needed now. It's needed for you, for your family, for your children. It's also needed for dependents. Dependents like seniors. All dependents were left out on the first stimulus check. If you have a senior and you declare that senior as a dependent on your tax return and they're in a convalescent home, or they stay with you and you take care of them, they're your mother and they're elderly and they're a dependent, they got nothing. Is that right? Comment below. We'd love to hear your answers. As always, stay with LALATE for more.